Welcome back for chapter 2 in my witchcraft book on death, The Death Journey. If you missed, a couple days ago I posted chapter 1. I am posting the first 3 chapters for free here on YouTube. Afterwards, every single chapter will be posted weekly onto my Patreon. That is where the audiobook will live, if you would prefer that format. Otherwise, it is now available as an ebook, paperback, or hardback, so you can always find the link in my description where you can find the links to just go straight and buy it if you want a physical copy instead. With all that said, let us continue on with Chapter 2, Death Beliefs. What happens when we die? Yes, the age-old question. While none of us truly know what happens when we take our final breath, all over the world, thousands of theories have sprung up over the years. Every religion has a belief of what happens once we die. In witchcraft, there are a few recurring beliefs. The first is reincarnation. This is the belief that when you die, you will be reborn again. How this looks is different to every tradition. To some, you are immediately reborn. To others, you may find yourself resting in a sacred place, such as the Summerland. Your soul rests for some time and reflects on the life you had before reincarnating. You may choose to relearn a life lesson that you did not fully understand during your previous life, or you may want to learn something entirely different. While the concept of reincarnating until you are a pure being is not as common in witchcraft, occasionally you will still find this. The majority of witchcraft traditions do not teach that you are impure and must evolve as a soul over many lifetimes. You are perfect as is. Life is a place to learn, not a test. Again, this varies tradition to tradition. The next recurring belief is the concept of the ancestors. If your witchcraft tradition includes the concept of pure beings graduated from the reincarnation cycle, they are usually the ancestors that witches call to on Samhain night. They have learned all that is necessary from life and no longer reincarnate. They offer wisdom and advice to those still living. For others, the ancestors are your relatives and friends who have died. This can stretch back hundreds of years. You may honor more recent ones with a dedicated altar at Samhain. The belief is that the ancestors of recent years, typically within a century, will remain for some time until they unage. They slowly revert back through their lives and become a soul with no life memories. The ancestors can also remain within the afterlife indefinitely. Again, not everyone believes in reincarnation. The ancestors may dwell in the various underworlds throughout the many pantheons. It could be Hades' realm or hell, not to be confused with the concept of hell from Christian beliefs. It could be the Summerland or the Isle of Avalon. My death beliefs. When writing any book on witchcraft, the information is written from the author's perspective. For this book, while I will occasionally make callouts to other beliefs, I will mainly be working from my perspective on death. You are free to adjust as needed for your own beliefs on the topic. My view of the afterlife has changed and evolved over the years. For the most part, a central concept remains: the soul splits. This may sound terrifying at first. To me, it isn't. Your soul detaches from your body when you die. Typically, there will be a period where the soul lingers. In my experience, this lingering lasts until the body has the final arrangements performed. Whether it is a cremation or a burial, the soul remains close by. The person may visit loved ones or remain by their body. How does this work for murdered or accidental deaths when a body is not properly cared for? I must say, though I have not personally experienced this with any of my loved ones, I would assume the soul lingers for a year. A part may remain, especially if their body is not found. In a number of myths, the death deities will go and collect the lost souls. Usually this happens around Samhain, though sometimes it is before Yule. I would assume this is when those murdered or accidental deaths have gone unfound are brought to the underworld. The idea of the underworld may sound frightening. It has been portrayed as a dark, cold, uncaring place in the media. However, I do not think of it that way. The underworld is the place most of us will go to when we inevitably die. In my belief, the underworld or afterlife appears differently to different people. Perhaps there are multiple places people go, or it is just a massive area. Think of how much variety there is within the United States alone. Perhaps you find a specific area of the underworld that you choose to remain. For instance, those who honor the Norse pantheon may go to Hel in her realm or area within the underworld. I can hear your thoughts already. Hell? Isn't that supposed to be Valhalla? Not necessarily. There is a lot of promotion for Valhalla, the modern adaptation of spelling and pronunciation for Odin's Hall. It has been referred to as the good place to go when you die. Later on in this book, I will discuss the various options of an underworld within the Norse context, along with other pantheons as well. I must remind you, dear reader, that this is my death belief. The majority of my practice as a witch is UPG, unverified personal gnosis. For myself, I consider all religions to be UPG, just with more people agreeing to the beliefs and concepts. That said, this approach is not for everyone. If this isn't for you, this book may not be the greatest resource. Throughout this book, I will be focused on a generic death goddess and the concept of the ancestors. The reason being, it is easier to insert whoever you believe to be the death deity. Now, this is where my belief can vary from others. I believe the soul can split and regrow. The essence of who you were in this life remains in the underworld. The other part of you reincarnates. This explains our past lives and how we can access them while currently living. This also explains the concept of ancestors and ghosts. This belief is not for everyone, and that's fine. I felt it was only appropriate to include my belief on the topic before we dive into the rest of the book, as I occasionally mention something from this belief. The thing with death and what awaits us all on the other side is that it is unknown. If you like my theory, feel free to include it into your own belief system. If not, now you know a different one and why you feel more strongly towards your current beliefs on death. There is no right or wrong way when it comes to this topic. Everyone is entitled to what they believe so long as it harms none. I know. I just said this was a book on witchcraft, not Wicca, yet there I am using their core message. While I no longer identify as Wiccan, the concept of harm none can still apply to the majority of witches, including this one. The topic is best saved for another day. For now, let us leave it simply as trying your best to not harm anyone. Death can bring out the worst in people. Do not stoop to their level. Drama occurs as rampant at funerals as it does weddings. Harm none in the context of this book mainly refers to how you approach others. If your deceased loved one was Christian, it might not be wise to insist on an elaborate pagan funeral. Respect is a two-way street. If people insist on it being a one-way street, consider how to uphold your boundaries respectfully without becoming aggressive or a doormat. This can be tricky when emotions are high. The best advice is try to maintain peace when possible during this time. Seek out counseling as needed, especially if you find other members of your family or the deceased friends having a number of snide remarks about your beliefs during this time. While I am not necessarily encouraging you to slink back into the broom closet, I am saying peace is usually the better option. Perhaps you wear your pentacle under your shirt during the funeral service. Your altar might be at home instead of in the hospital room. Unfortunately, it is quite rare to have a family and friend group who also believes in witchcraft. Do what you think is best during this time. And here we are at the end of chapter 2. Thank you so much for listening in for my second chapter of my book. Again, if you would like to get a physical copy of this, it is available in paperback and hardback. It's also available as an ebook. This audiobook variation will be available the first 3 chapters publicly here on my YouTube channel, and the rest will be uploaded weekly on my Patreon. So for my patrons, do keep an eye out for that, and thank you for your support as always. To find the links to my Patreon as well as to my book, you can find it at my website. It is always linked down below in the description of the video. Remember to stay tuned. Later this week, chapter 3 will be coming out, and until next time, blessed be.